Hey, this is Adam with the Adam Wines Guitar Academy, and today we're going to be doing a lesson on the intro to the Metallica song, Ride the Lightning. Here's that intro again for you. Okay, so this riff is in the key of E minor. The notes in E minor are E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, and then the note D. It's also related to the key of G major, so E minor is the relative minor of G major. So on the guitar, the E minor scale that's going to get utilized, there's so many places we could play the scale on the guitar, but for our purposes for this riff, the E minor scale is basically coming from the 14th position on the guitar. So it's up here. It's going, it's using the notes E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, and then it dips back into 12th position a little bit for the D and the E. It also uses the G over here and the A. So it's kind of going between two positions of the E minor scale on the guitar. Obviously, that wasn't the intro, but I just wanted you to see where the notes were coming from. Also, optionally, you can hit a low E pedal. What I mean by that is just a low E sixth string between each of the little tiny phrases here you'll see in a second. If it's too hard, you can skip it and just play the actual notes, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This riff is got a harmony happening, so Kirk Hammett is playing the higher part, and James Hetfield is playing the lower part. We're going to play the Kirk Hammett part first, and then I'll show you the James Hetfield part after that. In my opinion, I feel like the Kirk Hammett part is the part that kind of stands out a little more in this particular case. But anyway, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about why the harmonies work as well, which is a lot of fun, and it's very interesting. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to hit that low E pedal, and we're going to palm mute it. If you're not familiar with palm muting, you just take the bottom part of your palm here, like the side of your hand really, and like maybe a little bit of this part, and you just rest it on the guitar. If you palm mute on different parts over your bridge, you're going to get a little bit of different sounds. You may want to experiment a little bit, but typically for rhythm parts like this, I like to palm mute kind of over the bridge pickup here. So anyway, we're going to palm mute that low E pedal. Then after that, we're going to hit a B and a C on the G string. And there's a lot of vibrato here, especially on the second note of each phrase. So we hit a low E palm mute, and then B and C with that vibrato on the C. So if you don't know what I mean by the B, it's the 16th fret here on the G string, and the C is the 17th fret of the G string. So 16 to 17. So once again, low palm mute with the open sixth string, the 16th fret on the G string, and then the 17th fret of the G string with a lot of vibrato. And if you don't know what vibrato is, it's just moving the string up and down. Now, when I'm moving the string up and down, I'm not moving it back this way. I'm just kind of moving it this way and coming back. It's almost like a waveform. Like if you think of a waveform, that's the kind of the best visualization you can kind of think of with vibrato. So you're just playing that note, and you're kind of think of it like a waveform. It's coming up and down like that. Okay, so from there, we're going to hit that low sixth string palm mute again. And this time we're going to hit A and B, and then we're going to vibrato on the B. The A is the 14th fret on the G string, and the B is the 16th fret on the G string. So once again, low palm mute on the sixth string, 14 on the G, and 16 on the G with the vibrato. And I'm using index and ring for those particular notes, but feel free to use the fingers that feel good to you. So far. All right. Now, the next part, we're going to hit the low palm mute again on the E string. And this time, we're going to hit E and F sharp on the D string, which is 14 and 16 on the D string. And we'll also put some vibrato on the F sharp, or the 16th fret. Okay, let's put that together. All right, from there we hit the low palm mute again. And then we're going to hit 12 on the G string, which is a G, and 14 on the D string, which is an E, and with some vibrato. Okay, we put that together. Now, that is basically the intro. It just repeats a few times. And it repeats exactly 4 times, to be specific. Now, after the 4th time, and you've done your last vibrato on the 14th of the D string, or that E note, there's a bit of a slide. It slides from the 14th fret on the E string, which is an F sharp note, and then it just slides down. It's real easy. You just hit that note and slide your hand down. Very fun. That is a very common thing in metal music, where you do a slide before you go into the next riff or the next verse, etc. The Kirk Hammett part. 2, 3, 4th time in the slide. Okay, let's move on to the James Hetfield part. Okay, so the James Hetfield part is using also the E minor scale, just in a different position of the guitar. It's using some of the notes from 11th position, the F sharp and the G. It's using D and E on the D string, A and B on the A string, and then D and E on the low E string. So it's not using like the whole entire E minor scale, but just using pieces from this position. Typically the E minor scale down here comes from this position. Once again, we're not really playing that whole thing, but it's nice to know where it's coming from. So James Hetfield part also uses that low E pedal. So we go ahead and do that with the palm mute. Then it does F sharp and G on the G string, or 11 to 12. Also has the vibrato on the 2nd note each time. Okay, after that it does the low E pedal again. And then it does D and E on the D string, or 12 and 14. So far. Okay, after that it does A and B on the A string, which is 12 and 14, and of course you did the low E pedal. So far. And then it finishes with D and E on the low E string, which is 10 and 12. So far. Okay, so now let's talk about why those notes sync together. And what I mean by that is why the James Hetfield part and the Kirk Hammett part sound so good together. There's a music theory reason behind that. If you haven't caught on, all the notes come from the E minor scale, but they're each playing different notes from that scale at the same time, but it is in harmony and it sounds awesome. So if you remember, Kirk Hammett plays the B and a C first, where James Hetfield plays an F sharp and a G to start. So if you kind of play those notes together, like F sharp and B, I have to play the B in a different spot in order to get this harmony to work. That's the fun thing about the guitar. There's a ton of ways to play the same exact note. So we have F sharp on the G string here, which is 11, and B, 12th fret. I'm just doing this to show you what they would sound like together. That is an interval right there. That's a musical interval. It's called a fourth. The reason it's called a fourth is F to B, or F sharp to B in this particular case, has 4 notes in between. So what I mean by that, if you count in your hand F sharp, G, A, and B, you get 4 fingers, 4 notes between. So they call that interval a fourth. What's interesting is typically harmonies are done in thirds. So this is interesting that it's being done in fourths. It's a pretty cool sound. So that's the harmony happening there. Okay, so after that, Kirk Hammett's playing an A and a B, whereas James Hetfield is playing a D and an E. Okay, so another way we can play this temporarily, just so you can kind of see it here, we have 12 and 14 on the D and the G, and then 14 and 16 on the D and the G. So we have the D and the A, D and A, and it moves over, and we have the E and the B. So in this particular case, the top finger here is the Kirk Hammett part, and that's the James Hetfield part. Then it moves. There's the Kirk Hammett. There's the James Hetfield. Now, what's interesting here is this is a different interval. This is the interval of a fifth. D to A, if you count in your hand, D, E, F sharp, G, and A, so you get a fifth. And if you notice the shape here that I have, it's a power chord shape, and if you move, it's the same shape. So it's the same interval. It's an interval of a fifth. So we have a harmony of a fifth happening here, which is interesting. Like I said, typically harmonies are done in thirds, so this is interesting that it had a harmony of a fourth, and now it's going to a harmony of a fifth. It's very cool. And then the next part is also going to be a harmony of a fifth. So if you kind of want to see it together, you have 12 on the A, 14 on the D, and you move it over, and you got 14 on the A and 16 on the D. You can kind of hear them together there. So we got the A and the E, and we have the B and the F sharp. So Kirk Hammett part, James Hetfield, Kirk Hammett, James Hetfield. So another interval of a fifth, very cool. Now the last part's a little interesting as far as the harmony is concerned. Kirk Hammett has this 12th fret here, this high G note, whereas James Hetfield has this D down here. If you were to think of it from the G to the D, so this is a G and that's a D. If you were to think of it from G to D, that would be a fifth. But technically speaking, in this particular case, it's kind of upside down from that. So, and typically upside down, that would be a fourth, but it's up an octave. So it's a little more than a fourth. It's a fourth in an octave. So, which in this case would technically be an 11th. So that's very interesting. And then the final harmony here is actually an E and an E. And it's just an octave, so that's pretty interesting. So the harmony is kind of going between different intervals, a fourth to some fifths, to an 11th to an octave. So that's pretty cool. And all of those notes are in the same key. That's why the harmony works. But it's very interesting that they didn't just do thirds here. So that's very, very cool. So I hope you have fun with this. Practice each little section by itself. Some tips here when you're doing the Kirk Hammett part. Just sit and play the notes without the pedal for a second. Just get used to that. Just over and over. I like to do index middle, index ring, index ring, index ring. And then with the James Hetfield part, just, practice that little section by itself. I like to do index middle, index ring, index ring, index ring. Just practice that over and over until it's comfortable. Once you can play that, you don't have to think about it. You can throw in the pedals. So anyway, hope you have fun with this riff. Again, my name is Adam, and I am available for private Zoom lessons. Feel free to contact me directly, and my contact details are in the description.